Welcome back. Nigeria President Muhammadu Buhari has offered a symbolic apology to the deceased winner of the 1993 democratic election that was annulled by the military. The apology comes as Buhari is campaigning for a second term in office after making history in 2015 as the first opposition candidate to unseat a sitting president. Nigeria, which ended military rule in 1999, has suffered from a series of military coups since winning independence from Britain, including one led by Buhari in 1983. Buhari ruled as military head of state until 1985, when he was toppled by General Ibrahim Babangida.
Nigerians will no longer tolerate such perversion of justice. This retrospective and posthumous recognition is only a symbolic token of redress and recompense for the grievous injury done to the peace and unity of our country. On behalf of the federal government, I tender the nation's apology to the family of late MKO Abiola, who got the highest vote, and to those that lost their loved ones in the cause of June 12 struggle.
Another high-profile candidate has announced he wants to stand in next year's presidential election in Nigeria. Donald Duke, a former governor of Cross Rivers, has thrown his hat in the ring. However, he has held off declaring which party he would represent. Duke is a respected politician who was in charge of Cross Rivers for 8 years until 2007 and is a member of the People's Democratic Party. But he has been linked to a movement backed by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who has fiercely criticized Nigeria's incumbent Muhammadu Buhari. Obasanjo said in January that Buhari, whose fitness to govern has been questioned after he spent months in a London hospital, needed a deserved rest.
For over 6 months now, we've been mulling over it, talking to people, and trying to see how we will fit into this entire milieu called Nigeria. So we've come to the decision that we ought to put ourselves forward, and so I'll be running. We're building a movement across the country. That's what we're doing. And that's the way to go, because we want everyone involved. It's not a political party decision, it has to be the people's decision. This is a potentially great nation, but ethnic and religious considerations hold us back. We know what is good. Folks will tell you that, oh, this you'll make a great president, but you see, you don't come from this part. That's not, I'm not running as a Southerner, I'm running as a Nigerian, and that's what's important. And I'm constitutionally qualified to run. If you don't grow the economy, right, you can't do anything. People need to have jobs. There are too many people that are not operating within the economy, and it's evident. We say we have a GDP of about half a trillion, $500 billion. But if you look at our budget and our tax receipts, it only amounts to about 6–7%. That means the number of people captured within the economy is so small. We need to expand that, and that's the thrust of it.
And now joining me in studio is Nora Okonkwo, a Nigerian expert, to unpack these two stories making headlines in Nigeria. A very warm welcome to you once again. Just remind us of what happened with the presidential election that was annulled by the military in 1993.
Well, I would have said it's at times we go back to history to look at the events that took place. Apparently, the late MKO Abiola won the election fair and square, but was annulled by the then military ruler, Babangida. So there was a lot of uprising looking at it because it was a very fair election. And up until then, no sitting government has come to address that issue. Therefore, every June 12th, after 1993, nobody knows what could happen about the citizens or those that were affected as a result of that. So I think what the current incumbent president has done is a welcome development by touching on that sore point, by apologizing to Nigerians for the annulation of the election, and at the same time conferring the highest order, or the commander, the highest order to the late winner, to find a closure, to find a compromising meeting point to deal with this issue of the annulled election. That's what he has done, and which is very commendable. So we won't look at it from a point of being a closure. It's a beginning to looking for ways to make sure that this thing does not rear its ugly head to bring out an upheaval in the society.
I just want clarity on this one. Is it the first time that he apologized, or this takes place every year?
No, this is just the first. I haven't heard any sitting president from Olusegun Obasanjo and Jonathan apologize as a result of what happened about 25 years ago. So it's the first time the nation has come up to apologize that it was actually not right. It shouldn't have taken place. So, yeah.
And what has the nation said about this apology?
Well, it's been welcomed because the Nobel laureate, the Nobel laureate for literature, Professor Wole Soyinka, accepted the apology on behalf of Nigerians. So they've welcomed it. The question would be, from there, how do they balance the equations of those that were wrongfully denied of leadership? That would be another thing on the discussion. And I think that would be going on between the presidency and the people affected. His running mate is still alive, so they will look at ways to, compromise and get to an understanding.
Now, we understand that Buhari had said that the event was not meant to open old wounds, but rather to right the wrongs of the past, attended an unreserved apology to the family of Abiola on behalf of the entire country. But I want to talk about the timing. After so many years and only now this has been made.
Well, the timing, I don't know what would have prompted him to. Obviously, he has got advisors that are advising. But for me, I wouldn't be more concerned about the timing. I'm more concerned that he did something that is applaudable. That's what I would look at. Coming out and apologizing to the nation on behalf of what the government has done years back shows a bit of merit, decorum on his part. Therefore, if other governments do not recognize that it was a wrong done, then he has been able to recognize a wrong done and wants to set the record straight. For him to say it's not about to open old wounds. Yes, however, unfortunately, old wounds will be open because some people are still sore. But it's a right step in the right direction to quell any uprising, unforeseen circumstance or disaster from the June 12 debacle.
With the June 12th debacle, we know that Nigeria conquered various obstacles that they were faced with at the time to gain nationhood as well as unity. How far has Nigeria come? Are they still dealing with those obstacles, or it was all left in 1993?
Remember, the people that won the mandate then was mostly from the southwest Okay, that's where the late MKO Abiola comes from. So what calmed the nation down then was the military, because it was a military rulership then. The military brought in forces to quell any uprising. In fact, they brought out the tanks and they were shooting aside for anybody that would challenge the decision of the ruling militia. So it's over 20 years now.
Yes.
Nigeria is still dealing with that because they feel that the Southwest were robbed of a right mandate to rule, which was the voice of the people. So we are still trying to come to grips because Nigeria is trying to balance a lot of factors here. We have been under military rule for a very long period of time. So we are dealing with no more military coup d'etats, and now we are dealing with democracy. So democracy has to try and balance the stability, integrate factions that we are not together. So I think this is a very good channel to properly integrate and heal wounds from the area that we are supposed to be in rulership.
And now for our viewers at home, we will be moving on to our next discussion where another high-profile candidate has announced he wants to stand in next year's presidential election in Nigeria. Donald Duke, a former governor of Cross Rivers, he has thrown his hat in the ring. Mr. Okonkwo, what is your reaction to this one?
You see, it's just like when Obama declared his intention to run for the White House, for the presidency. And there you have Hillary Rodham Clinton in the same camp. You know, a lot of people never gave him the chance to. So it's just like he is exercising his fundamental right as a citizen of Nigeria by saying vividly he wants to contest 2019 election because he's a high profile. What makes him a high profile candidate? Because of his rulership as a governor in one of the states for 8 years. Therefore, people are saying that, is it a welcome development? If you analyze it critically, you come to the realization that he's announcing his intention to run for 2019 presidential election for Nigeria. It has different mixed reaction because a lot of people are still going to come out and announce their intentions. What I would look at would be, what is his manifesto? He is saying that the current incumbent is not living up to expectation, that he is stuck in the past. In the past few weeks, the current incumbent have done remarkable things that is worthy to note and worthy to be remembered. The deal he had secured between us and Morocco as a bilateral agreement is worthy to note. The incumbent also apologizing to the nation about the wrong of the state for annulling the election is a welcome development. And he's trying to fight corruption. He's trying to right the wrongs from his. So the question would be, what is manifest? One is to declare his intention to run. The second would be, what do you intend to achieve if given that platform, which we are yet to see.
All right. Thank you so much for staying here with us. That was Nworo Okonkwo, Nigerian expert, just giving us some more details, unpacking those two stories that we had today. Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari has offered a symbolic apology to the deceased winner of the 1993 democratic election that was annulled by the military. And we also know that another high-profile candidate has announced he wants to stand in next year's presidential election in Nigeria. Right now, Africa Tonight will take a short break. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned. All right, instead of taking that break, victims who suffered atrocities committed by Jean-Pierre Bemba's militia are speaking out after he was acquitted of war crimes. The crimes were committed between October 2002 and March 2003 in the Central African Republic. Bemba was recently acquitted and released by the International Criminal Court. He now awaits his release, which his lawyers say must be effected immediately. In the International War Crimes, judges last week acquitted Bemba on appeal, overturning an 18-year sentence for war crimes committed in CAR. Meanwhile, Bemba supporters erupted in joy as they watched the announcement on live TV, and cheering was even heard at the National Assembly. In 2016, the ICC's judges had unanimously found guilty on 5 charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity for abuses committed by his troops during a 5-month rampage.
Et ils sont arrivés dans notre concession où ils ont tué ma mère, mes 2 sœurs, et ensuite moi, Dieu merci, j'étais éloigné de la maison. Nous sommes très mécontents de la décision du CPI parce que nous croyons qu'ils sont en train d'encourager les criminels. Les grands criminels tels que les Ali Daras et les Noureddin et les consomment là, ils tuent, ils pillent, ils violent, ils font tout dans le pays et par la suite on va dire qu'ils ne sont pas coupables.
Now joining me in studio is human rights activist Jean Boassa. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Now, the victims who suffered atrocities committed by Jean-Pierre Bemba's militia are speaking out after he was acquitted of war crimes. Why has it taken so long for this to finally happen?
Well, why has it taken so long? That's a very interesting question. But again, I want to just interrogate the fact, what is the ICC for? Is the ICC only for Africans, or the ICC should be there for each and every individual who has committed war crimes? You must be aware that there has been war in Iraq, there has been war in Syria, there's war in Congo, as we speak right now for years, and those criminals that have perpetrated or committed atrocities in the Congo or in the countries that I have just mentioned have never been brought in front of the ICC. So this is a parody of justice which might be politically driven for Jean-Pierre Bemba not to conquer or to contest the election in 2011. And besides that, it is important that we also underline the fact that they caught Jean-Pierre Bemba, but the person, the president of the Central Republic was not brought to court. How can the ICC justify the fact that somebody who has been commissioned has to go in front of the law, but the person who was entitled to go in front of the law has been free until the very moment we are speaking? But it is sad, however, for the victims of Jean-Pierre Bemba, if ever he had committed those crimes and war crimes, it is sad for them. We truly have empathy for the suffering they have undergone, but it is also important that we say he has already paid for 10 years, no freedom. So it's about time that we release him and we see the way forward.
Because now we also know that his lawyers are saying that he must be released and this needs to take place immediately.
Well, for the mere fact that he has served 10 years, I do things for in a lifetime. If you were 30 and they release you after 30 years, you have learned a lesson. And for me, Jean-Pierre Bemba has learned his lessons, and he has to come and, as a leader of the Congolese nationals and citizens, he's got many supporters behind him. It is important that he comes in the framework of the current political crisis that is being undergoing in the Congo. So it is very important, and we want him released and come back home.
Will the victims be protected in this case?
The victims, if I'm correct, the victims are in Central Republic Central of Africa, so they are not in the Congo. So if they are there, they will be protected because he's not going to cross the border, go and ill-treat them. So they will be protected.
And now, the ICC's Trust Fund for Victims in the CAR was initially unveiled in 2013, but it failed to become operational because of the security situation. How is it now?
How is it now? My question is simple. The ICC has to make and to ensure that there's no double standards measures. So in 2002, that's when they created the ICC with the Roma Treaty. But it has only served the purpose of bringing Africans and black people to court, not other people. So that's my take. Whether it is good or not for me today, it's not the point. Today is the release of Jean-Pierre Mbemba.
So we know that he left the ICC detention last night. Do you have any more information besides that?
Well, talking with the people in the Congo, they're actually jeering and they're actually applauding. And we heard the second-in-command, Mrs. Eva Bazaiba, who was talking to him over the phone. So surely he went to Belgium. That's what we read in the media. But we want him to make a declaration. That's the only time we would know that he is released effectively. Once we see him speaking in the media, as I am sitting here, that's when we would be truly happy to see our brother, citizen of the Congo, be free and released and breathe the fresh air so that we know that our brother will come and contest in the Congo, if ever there are elections.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
It's a pleasure, madam.
And that was human rights activist Jean Boissa just giving us some more details as victims who suffered atrocities committed by Jean-Pierre Bemba's militia are speaking out after he was acquitted of war crimes. And now moving on, government has condemned any form of traditional or myth-related killings of people living with albinism. Arts and Culture Minister Natim Tetwa made the clarion call for the protection of people living with albinism at the Albinism Awareness Day event held in Witbank. This year's theme is Shining Our Light to the World. The aim is to put an end to discrimination, stigma and attacks against people with albinism. It also aims to boost their self-confidence. Africa is one of the continents experiencing most killings of people living with albinism. The day was proclaimed by the United Nations in 2014. And now joining us over the phone line is Mr. B.M. Tabete, a chairperson of Albinism Society KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you so much for joining us here on Africa Tonight. Now, this year's theme is Shining Our Light to the World. Please take us through how events unfolded across the country today, especially in KZN.
The celebration of June 13, you'll pardon me for the voice, we've been shouting and celebrating the whole day. The celebration of June 13 this year coincided with the resolution taken in a disability parliament in 2017 in KZN. I believe KwaZulu-Natal is the only province that is conducting sectoral parliaments where the all elder people, youth, disability have their parliament. So we were looking at how people with albinism are protected in South Africa, particularly in KZN, because the parliament was KZN. We discovered that there is a different level of understanding in issues of albinism from different departments and from different private sector people or business people. So we ended up taking a resolution that there's a need to have a summit, at least for 3 days, to look at how the government and private sector look at issues of albinism and how people with albinism expect to be assisted. So we identified June 13 as the appropriate time for us to prepare and to engage in dialogues with different departments. So we took June 13 as the celebration. I think it's after 5 years celebrated as a disability, and it was the celebration of the benefits that are encapsulated in this day. Benefits including schooling, including workplaces, including accessing services from the government as well.
Now, what are you expecting from the government when it comes to the protection of people who are living with albinism?
Let me correct the terminology first.
Yes.
As we have albinism, we don't live with albinism, we have albinism.
Oh, yes.
So
Sorry
the proper
about that.
terminology is saying people with albinism, not living with albinism, because it is not a disease, it is a condition.
Yes.
One thing that we identified is that we need a common understanding. It's better to walk a path together if you understand one another.
Yes.
Understanding in terms of how do we look at the situation, how do we look at issues of safety, how is it affecting us? And from there, if they understand, they will look at their policies, they will look at their practices, and merge their practices with our experiences and our expectations. I think that is the starting point, because South Africa has got good constitution, and the constitution is not allowing anybody to force an activity to another person. You need to engage, you need to talk to a person, you need to negotiate terms, and you need to move together. So we believe the first place or the first step that we have to achieve is the common understanding that will engage both of us, the private sector, the sector and people with albinism in dialogue.
And we know that the government has condemned any form of traditional or myth-related killings of people living with albinism. Has the number of killings decreased?
We can't say the number has decreased. I think we are 20 years experienced with issues of albinism. Before we started these campaigns in 1998, there were killings that were not recorded. There were marginalizations that were not communicated. Now that everything is exposed and we are in a democratic era, we are experiencing these things. We can't compare them because these are two separate eras. We can't compare anything to anything. So we can't say they are increasing because comparing them to nothing. We are witnessing them. And we can attest. Before we embarked on these campaigns, there were many of these killings. They were not reported. When we started, people began to say, it happened to me, and I did not have anybody to report to. There are existing cases. There are cases that are not concluded, and there are cases that are concluded, like the case of Tandazile. It was concluded and people were sentenced. But a case for the Natave family, a child was not found until today. A case of a person along the Cape, he was buried with missing ligaments. So in KZN, we do experience these things, but we can't say they're increasing or they're decreasing because we don't compare them to anything. as they were happening in different eras.
Yes. Now, I know you have touched on that there has been a number of cases that have been opened and that need to be dealt with. Now, I just wanted to find out, has government said anything on the investigations of these cases so far?
Let me set the record straight. There are cases that are taking place, reported but not recorded. Police officers are not willing to record some of the cases because, take for example, when a person is going to a police station reporting that somebody was hunting me down, I had to run, I escaped the trap. Police officers would say, we can't open a case because you were not injured and nobody was kidnapped. Now, you can see a loophole. If there's nothing happened to you physically, it cannot be a chargeable case. Even if it happened to you psychologically and emotionally, they don't consider it. So when they want to legislate the issues of albinism and the attacks, we have to sit down and have a common understanding on what affects us directly, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. Then they design a strategy around the informed base as to how do we approach these cases and how do we charge them, how do we make them chargeable cases.
So at this point, you're saying that no programs have been put in place to help those who have been hurt emotionally when reporting these cases, and nothing can be done about it.
I think people have to understand that an emotional pain is dangerous more than a scar in the body. I believe, although some departments are doing something in relation to these things, it is not enough because it is not touching the core of a person. We get hurt a number of times. We report maybe these things to social workers. Because they lack information, we don't have common understanding about issues of albinism. They think these cases are light.
And now, still on that point, the awareness campaign is to also boost the self-confidence amongst people with albinism. What plans have been put in place to make sure that self-confidence is built amongst people who have albinism?
In KZN, we have developed support groups. I think support groups have played a very important role in boosting the esteem of people with albinism. As I was saying, we are witnessing them completing matric, although they are not completing in great numbers, but it's a numerical number. It's not exponential yet. But we do have people who complete matric and they get learnerships, they get into programs. But it is through the support groups that we are able to achieve that. Support groups in KZN are structured such that we meet monthly. Like in Durban, we meet the third week of the month, where we discuss issues at length. We negotiate terms. We give people strategies on how to navigate through these challenges, and we are witnessing a change. People are able to accept themselves. People are able to communicate. They are able to mingle with others. They are better off in terms of their emotional stability.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. B.M. Tabete, Chairperson of Albinism Society in KwaZulu-Natal, just giving us more details. As you know, that the government has condemned any form of traditional or myth-related killings of people living with albinism. Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa had made the clarion call for the protection of people living with albinism at the Albinism Awareness Day event, which was held in Witbank. Right now, Africa Tonight will take a short break. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned.